There are places in the world that were not made for human beings. Environments so extreme and unforgiving that a single miscalculation can mean the difference between life and death. But what if there is no miscalculation? What if a group of perfectly trained and equipped people is decimated in the middle of the night by something that science to this day cannot explain? Today, the Enigma Archive travels to the former Soviet Union to unearth the files of what is considered the greatest and darkest unsolved mystery of the 20th century, the Dyatlov Pass Incident. February 1959, 10 students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute, all mountaineers and skiers with the highest level of experience, set out on an expedition in the Ural Mountains. The goal was to reach the peak of Mount Ural, a route classified as Category 3, the most difficult that existed, recommended only for the elite of Soviet mountaineering. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a brilliant 23-year-old, respected for his extreme caution and survival skills. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. They had maps, carefully calculated supplies, heavy clothing, and diaries to record the journey. At the beginning of the journey, one of the members, Yuri, felt severe joint pain and had to abandon the expedition and return home. He didn't know it, but that pain was the greatest stroke of luck of his entire life. He would be the only survivor. The other 9 continued their march towards the mountain, and they would never return. Through the cameras and diaries recovered later, we know exactly what the first days of the expedition were like. The photos show happy young people smiling, chopping wood, and working as a team. There was no tension. There were no fights. On February 1st, due to a heavy snowstorm that reduced visibility to almost zero, the group deviated slightly from the planned route. Upon realizing their mistake, Igor Dyatlov made a decision. Instead of descending into the forest to take shelter in the trees, they would set up camp right there on the exposed slope of Kolatsyakal Mountain, in the language of the local indigenous people. The Kolatsyakal has a chilling translation, the mountain of the dead. They pitched their large canvas tent, had dinner, changed their heavy ski boots for warm socks to sleep in, and lay down side by side. The temperature outside was 30 degrees below zero. What happened in the following hours is the black hole of the investigation. When the group failed to return by the agreed deadline, weeks passed before the families demanded an answer from the Soviet government. A massive search and rescue operation involving the military, helicopters, and sniffer dogs was sent to the Mountain of the Dead. And on February 26th, the rescue team found Igor Dyatlov's camp. But what they saw paralyzed the investigators. The group's tent was half buried in the snow. As they approached, the investigators noticed something completely illogical. The tent hadn't collapsed. It had been cut, and the forensic examination proved that the tiers were made from the inside out. Think of the desperation required for that. 9 veteran climbers in the middle of the night with a temperature of 30 degrees below zero didn't use the tent door. They used knives to tear the fabric and desperately flee into the blizzard. Inside the tent, the scene was one of instant abandonment. Everything was there. The snow boots lined up, the heaviest coats, money, diaries, and even the plates with the remains of dinner. Outside, marked in the frozen snow, the evidence of the escape. There were 9 pairs of footprints descending the slope towards a forest more than a kilometer away. The footprints showed that they weren't running chaotically. They walked together, but almost all were barefoot or wearing only socks. One of them was wearing only one shoe. What could terrify 9 survival experts to the point of forcing them to cut their own protection and walk to their deaths by freezing in the middle of the night? The search team followed the tracks to the edge of the forest under a large pine tree, and it was there that the first bodies were found. There were remnants of a small campfire they had tried to keep burning using branches from the tree. The pine branches were broken up to a height of 5 meters. indicating that even while freezing, one of them desperately climbed the tree. The police's immediate question was, did he climb to try to see the camp from afar or to hide from something below? Between the pine tree and the tent, the police found 3 more bodies, including that of the leader, Igor. Their position in the snow showed they were trying to crawl back to the camp when they froze to death. Up to this point, the tragedy could be explained as a severe case of hypothermia causing severe mental disorientation, but the story changed in May of that year when the snow melted and the last 4 bodies were found at the bottom of a ravine. The autopsy reports of these 4 young men made no sense to science. While the first 4 died of cold, the last 4 suffered devastating internal injuries. 1 had a crushed skull. 2 had completely sunken chests with multiple fractured ribs. The Soviet forensic doctor declared that the force required to cause that damage would be equal to the impact of a serious car accident. However, the most disturbing detail, there were no external injuries. The skin was intact. There were no scratches, no bruises. Whatever struck them broke their bones from the inside without tearing the skin from the outside, and the macabre details didn't stop there. The tongue and eyes of one of the young women had been removed, and upon analyzing the clothing of the ravine victims, the Soviet army detected high levels of radiation, an inexplicable anomaly for an isolated mountain. The Soviet investigation was hastily closed a few weeks later. The official government verdict was frustrating and frightening. The young men died victims of an unknown greater force. The files were sealed, and the mountain area was off limits to the public for years. Theories, of course, exploded. Some researchers claimed that secret Soviet military weapons tests caused panic, and the impact of a vacuum bomb would explain the internal injuries without external marks. Others believe in a natural phenomenon called infrasound waves that vibrate at a frequency the human ear cannot perceive, but which cause uncontrollable and irrational panic in the brain. In 2020, the Russian government reopened the case and concluded that it was a snow avalanche that forced them to flee and crushed them in the ravine. But mountaineering veterans reject this theory. The mountain slope was not sufficient for a large avalanche, and the tent was not buried when it was found. The search ceased, but doubts remained. The 9 from Dyatlov Pass were no amateurs. They wouldn't have cut their tent and run barefoot on the ice without a real, physical, and terrifying reason. This is the Enigma file. And for you, what awaited them in the darkness of that mountain? Leave your theory in the comments, like the video, and subscribe so we can continue investigating the greatest enigmas of humanity.